Ok, mister, como estamos aquí en la Copa del Mundo y que España, vamos a celebrar que España va a ganarlo, haremos esta entrevista en español, ¿ok?
Sounds great. Sounds great to me. I didn't know you had that in your arsenal.
Yeah, sorry. So I've been training that one since we decided we were going to do this. Like I've been looking in the mirror every day for like an hour practicing how I was gonna, and I botched it. It totally didn't come out the way I thought it would. Hey, Coach, thanks for joining me. Thanks for taking the time. All of that, really do appreciate it. You're one of the good guys in the game, so I know you're really busy up there. Tufts keeps you totally all in, so thank you very much.
I appreciate that. I'm happy to be here.
Hey, so let's just jump right into it. I would really, again, just because I'm an outsider, not even an outsider, I'm like the YouTube watcher guy. Like that's the only exposure I get to Tufts. How do you think your season went? Like what's your sense of the season? Yeah, start
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Well, no. Thanks for having me, and thanks for your continued interest in Division Three soccer and for what you're doing. I do think it's raising just a level of interest, and I know you guys play around and joke around on the board and stuff, and I think the kids do read it and they get good laughs out of a lot of it, and I think it's added, and I think I'm sure some of the parents do too. So I think there's a lot of interest in Division Three soccer right now,
Thank you.
you're owed a large part of that is owed to you. I think so. It's
Thank
really
you.
cool. As far as how our season went, you have to be. I have to be a little bit careful of how I say this because standards at Tufts are really, really high, and we have an incredible program. But in all reality, after what we lost after the 2021 season, which was more or less 8 starters, 3 of probably the top 5 or 10 players in the country.
Ever.
Yeah,
I'd say ever.
yeah.
Like you can.
Yeah. I think what we always say at Tufts is we want to compete to win the NESCAC championship and we want to compete to win the national championship. And I believe if you're in the NESCAC playoffs, you're competing to win the championship. And if you're in the NCAA tournament, you're competing to win the national championship. So, as a coach, I actually, our program's won 4 national championships and the standards are really, really high. But as a coach, I think we actually did incredibly well this year. And to get to the second round of the NCAA tournament with very few upperclassmen, a ton of freshmen and sophomores out there playing massive minutes for us. Again, I always want to give ourselves the best shot at trying to win a national championship. But at the end of the day, I think I would have signed up for this type of season before it started.
Yeah. So, I mean, did that surprise you? Was there anything that sort of surprised you out of this group and sort of how the season went?
We had 4 seniors come back for an extra year, and unfortunately 2 of them were injured for most of it, which has kind of been our MO with these 5th-year super seniors that come back.
Yeah.
We've suffered some injuries from some of those guys, and I do think the kind of super senior piece is maybe 1 more year of that, and then we'll have, I think all of our programs will have worked through that. But I think the biggest surprise for me was just a positive one. We had a number of freshmen who played significant minutes for us, and that's really hard at our level. It's really hard in the NESCAC. It's really hard at the top end of Division III. And then I think one of the most satisfying pieces was, as a coach, we had a number of sophomores that played very little or next to none at all their freshman year in 2021, who started or played significant minutes this year and really contributed. And so just like really pleased with guys in the program, who don't necessarily see the reward for their work, their first year, but continue to work hard, worked really hard in the off season, and then were able to make massive impacts that got us, ultimately to the NCAA tournament this year.
So we'll talk about the season specifically, but I will say, like, I don't mean this as a bad way, right? Like, we're just talking soccer, but yeah. I could tell there were moments, like, you could just see freshman mistakes and I'll just say young player mistakes where you're like, oh, that was not the right decision, or that was you're missing something. It just struck me as that was the case throughout the year. Is like,
Yeah, yeah. I think those sentiments are certainly true.
yeah,
But I think still for me, like the overriding feeling on the freshmen was, while there were some mistakes or there were some moments where you wanted them to have like a little more quality or a little more like drive to go forward and
yeah, yeah,
look for an assist or a goal or something. To play in the NESCAC with, I mean, there were times where we had like 6 freshmen on the field this year,
yeah.
was pretty remarkable. And so I'm actually like, regardless of a
No,
couple of mistakes here and there, I'm like so
yeah,
proud of our
yeah,
guys.
yeah, yeah. I didn't. Look. It sets those freshmen up for an outstanding sophomore year, right? So I'm totally with you there. It was just I'm just looking at the season and trying to sort out different things that I watched that I'm like, oh, that doesn't look right, and there were times, yeah. So we'll get into that a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah.
So let me ask you the $1 million question that your boss will probably ask you. Like, how would you assess your coaching this season?
That's a tough question to ask.
I'm a tough interviewer, by the
Yeah, yeah.
way. Yeah, right.
Um, for all intents and purposes, I think we had an incredible year given how young we were. And I think we were a little offensively inept is the word I'll use. We struggled to score goals is the harsh reality of our season. And to be as competitive as we were and to win, some big games against Amherst and Middlebury and some others, I think what I'll say is I think my staff did an incredible job. I'm really lucky with my 3 assistant coaches that I have and our athletic trainer. And so I think overall we had an incredible year, and I can tell you that like I had an absolute blast coaching this team this year because it just while there were still a few upperclassmen, it just felt like it was just a new generation of tough soccer, and one that I feel really, really confident in 2023, 2024, 2025 are going to be right where we need to be competing for everything.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't doubt that. Like, that's definitely not something I doubt. Like, to me, it was just, like you said, I think the biggest thing are the players you lost the year before. And anybody would have to deal with that because they were such an impactful group of players. But yeah, I clearly think you'll recover from that. It just it takes a little bit of time.
Yeah, you could. There were times this year where I actually thought we played better soccer than at any point in 2021. Just in 2021, you had. Calvin Arrow would come head in a corner kick, or Travis Van Burr would score on a direct kick, or Diageo Paletta would come head in a corner kick, and we just didn't have that. We just didn't have that this year, and that comes from just like juniors and seniors usually.
Yeah. That knack for goal. Yeah, you definitely didn't have that. I do think you scored some nice goals throughout, but I just don't think it was enough, right? Like the production wasn't enough. But boy, I'm being really critical, aren't I? I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be. I'm like was really interested because I watched a lot of your games because I was really interested in that. Hey, how does a program go from where you were at and with those players to the next year? So I'm not trying to be a jerk. Just
no, I get it, and we feel it. We want to compete to win the national championship. I just think that if you make the NCAA tournament, you've had a heck of a season. I will never be willing to let that go.
Yeah. I'm not. It's not a disagreement. I'm just sort of looking at the soccer side of it and just sort of really specifically and about that. Like I said, I do think like your Amherst game was a killer game. Like what you guys did in that game in that environment was just outstanding. And I think there I was like, man, if you can capture that in a bottle. Like how that grit and how you guys kept going after it. Like you capture that, then your season's fine. It's just, it's just doing that consistently, I think, is what I noticed where it just didn't seem that way. But anyhow, we'll talk about that. Okay, so let me ask, for next season, do you sort of have an eye into some of the things that you think you need to concentrate? Is it the goal scoring that you think you're lacking the most at?
Yeah, I think it's just we actually felt like we even created chances this year. We just weren't scoring goals. So it's just it's finishing chances. It's definitely, and you can see this throughout what's happening in the NCAA tournament, how important set
Yeah.
pieces are. It's
Yeah.
becoming a little more ruthless on set pieces.
Yeah.
It's like the part of our game nobody wants to talk about, or the uglier side of our game, but
Yeah.
it's really important. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I said this in 2021. I thought Con College won the national championship because of how good they were on set pieces.
Set
So,
pieces. Yeah.
and you're seeing it now. I mean, Williams is in the Final Four because of how good they are on
Yeah.
set pieces. So,
Yeah.
those are areas that we need to get better at. But again, I think it's like we'll have. This year we were primarily, most of the players on the field were in their first or second years of
Yeah.
college.
Yeah.
Next year,
Yeah.
we'll be in their second or
Yeah.
third year.
Just maturity. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
But
fair. That's,
you have to score goals to win games, and
yeah.
at the
Yeah.
end of the day, like, we just didn't do that enough, which is why we had, what did we have, 7 or 8 ties this year?
Yeah. Yeah. Well. Yeah. All right. So totally random. Who do you think's going to win the World Cup?
USA.
Okay. You're banking on. Okay.
I'm not, yeah, it's the only team I'm supporting. So yes,
Yeah. Okay.
I think the
Okay.
USA will win the World Cup in a month.
I kind of have two choices, like U.S. or I don't know, Spain, I guess, because I have the gear. No.
Yeah.
All right, so I do want to touch on the rule changes, just because you were definitely sort of impacted by those overtime or lack of overtime with the, what is it, 7? Yeah, 7 ties. What are your thoughts on it now that you've gone through it?
I'm not sure. I think like programs, programs like us and Williams had a number of ties this year, and far more than we would have had in the past. I mean, games could always tie prior to 2022 as well.
Sure.
It's just something like half of the games that went to overtime
were resolved.
Winners, right?
Yeah.
But I think, I don't know. I do think, certainly when the NCAA tournament teams are selected, like, I think ties took on a bigger importance this year than maybe they had in the past. And I think the national committee looked at, a good tie and also some bad ties, actually. And so they really delved into that. I think it gives more work to all these regional and national committees that have to really delve into the results a little bit more. Realistically, I probably don't like it. At Tufts, we have incredible depth in our program, and I think we could win some games in overtime. But if it's here to stay, it is what it is, and ultimately it'll be on us to figure out a way to win games in the 90 minutes a little bit better. But I don't. As far as it being a positive or a negative, I'm not sure. I don't know. There's a lot of ties, so it's weird. It is weird when you look at those records and you're like, that team is 7, 2, and 9. But I think the NESCAC is also such a different conference than any other league out there, and I think there's a lot of really good leagues out there. It's just the 10th team in the NESCAC is a team that could get to the Sweet 16. Like, that's the reality of our league. And so there's going to be more ties in our league than any other league, I believe. So it makes some of our records a little bit ugly. But I still, I value our league, and I think you put some of the best teams around the country in other leagues in the NESCAC, and I would think that their records will look something like ours do.
Do you think, did you or did any other coaches, you think, did their coaching change as a result of knowing that you're only going 90 minutes? Like, were you, I'm not saying you, but as an example, like, would you have been satisfied, like, hey, 70 minutes in, we're at 1-1, I'm okay. Like, you know what? Like, let's just hold on. Let's just, I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm more curious about it.
Yeah, it definitely impacts your coaching. It impacts your thinking. I don't know. In games we had a 1-goal lead with 5 minutes left. In my past brain would have been thinking, like, we can't give up an equalizer because then the momentum and we'll lose in overtime. And now you're thinking is like, if we give up a goal, like, it'll be a tie, or if you score one, sometimes you score the late goal to tie up the game and you think, all right, now we have all the momentum, let's go win this thing. And it just doesn't happen. Do people coach differently? Because I don't know. I don't think we're looking for too many ties. But there's the weird part of it too. Like, especially in the NESCAC, like if we go on the road to, I
Yeah,
don't know,
that's
probably
what I
shouldn't say
mean.
this out loud, but like we go on the road to Middlebury or Bowdoin or Con
Yep.
College or Amherst, like getting a tie is potentially a really good result and a
Yeah.
result that can help you get into the NCAA tournament. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's just an interesting piece, and
Yeah. Yeah.
if it stays the way that it is, I think the results will continue to be quite similar.
Yeah. Yeah. I everybody I spoke to last year about the incoming rule change all said like, no, 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 we're gonna go for the win. And then I watched all these games. I'm like, that doesn't really look like going for the win, but that's why I ask. But it is. It's sort of like it's just the reality you're dealing with. It's like, hey, you're on turf and it's raining. How do you play? It changes the
Yeah,
dynamic of the game. So you just something else to consider.
yeah,
I got to ask, and you guys are different in NESCAC. I totally get it. So I'd sort of been going back and forth on this idea, and it's actually, I don't know if it's a proposal or some idea that is requesting that Division III soccer sort of match the football schedule, right? Like you roughly start a week earlier, end a week later. So you
hmm
basically stretch out the season by, 10 to 14 days. Um, and knowing you guys are different, is that something you could get behind? Or like, would that be something you'd be interested in doing? Sort of getting a little bit more time on the front end or back end?
yeah. I think the only scary piece for me is what the NESCAC president would say to that, and if they care.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I
if
get
anything
it.
would change for us.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's a great change. I think our schedule is way too compact, and if we could
Mm-hmm.
add a week or two on maybe a week on each end,
Mm-hmm.
like logistically thinking about it with the weather that I just saw at some of the places in the Sweet Six, if you
Mm-hmm.
when you do start to extend it and you have you know I don't know. It's a lot of games in
Yeah.
November that could be playing in
Yeah.
some tricky weather conditions,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I don't know. Schools figure it out, and most schools have one turf field that you could always move to and
Yeah.
things. So I would certainly be all for it. I think I would love to get an extra game or two in the NESCAC. We're only allowed to play 15, and I think
Yeah.
I think some of us like 8 win
Yeah.
teams. All of a sudden, if you have 3 extra games or 2 extra games, maybe you're a 10 or 11 or 12 team.
Yeah.
Team.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I would be all for that change. I think it would make sense. We just squeeze so many. I mean, you look at what teams do in that first like 10 days of the season, and everybody plays 5 games in 9 days.
Yeah. Oh my God. Oh my
And
God.
then the crazy of Division III is like that result you got on the first weekend of the season might be why you make or don't make the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And you're ragged, right? Like that's the other thing. I'm like, you know, right? Preseason can be grueling in its own way, right?
yeah,
And then you go into these games and you really, I don't know. And like you said, you're playing 5 games in 10 days. Like that's a recipe for make or break, right?
yeah,
Like just psychologically, if you go, that's why I'm so impressed with Ohio Wesleyan. They went 0-4-2,
yeah,
and they managed to turn it around and get to the tournament, win the NCAC, and get to the tournament. But a lot of teams would have been like 0-4-2. Our season is done. It's over, right? And you just would have been like, it's no chance to recover.
No,
So
no, their season was incredible. I wondered the
yeah,
same thing because I think seasons can also go the other way where a, a mediocre team just starts out 5-0 and then
five,
they have
yeah, yeah. And they get
tons
all
of
this. Absolutely, they get all this momentum, and it's like,
yeah,
hey, we could take this. We could take these guys who we've never beaten, right?
yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I know you guys are different, so all this, if it were to ever happen in all Division III, it could not happen for you guys in the NESCAC just the way you are. So,
yeah. I hope it does. I just hope the NESCAC presidents then just don't say, "Well, you guys can't go to the NCAA tournament like football."
yeah, why? Do you know why is that? I don't understand. The Ivy Leagues don't allow their teams to go, their winner to go to bowls or anything like that. So, what is there a rationale for that aside from some very smart people around the room making dumb decisions? Oh, did I say that? I'm sorry.
I think I'll refrain and just go no comment.
Yeah, that's a wise one. That's a wise one. We can cut it out. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so like you mentioned, I think for the entire season, I didn't do the math, but you went 8-3-7. You lost to Williams on PKs in a tie in the NESCAC, and then you lost to Oneonta in the tournament in the second round, which I think yeah, I thought that was probably some of the best soccer I saw you play, at least in that first half.
Mm-hmm.
You tied 4 times at Bellow Field, which I always likened to a fortress, you know? Like, did that surprise you that you weren't able to get results there? I mean, is it...
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, our season, it's we lost 3 games, but like it's hard to say, I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
we had a pretty good year when you play the type of schedule we play and you lose 3 games. Oneonta, I mean, I think you're right. The first 20 minutes of that game, I thought
I
we
thought
played
you...
the best 20 minutes that we
Oh, my
played
gosh.
all
Yeah.
season, and then they have a kid that's going to be an All-American forward, I assume,
Yeah.
and Lucas Fecci, and they come down inside our 18 for the first time, cross the
First
ball,
time.
and they're up 1-0.
Yeah.
And knowing just the struggles we had to score goals this year, you
Yeah.
just all of a sudden the game becomes a little bit difficult for us.
Mm-hmm.
But Oneonta is really good. I mean, I know they lost to Bowdoin in the next round, but like it was 2-1. They had a PK that could have tied the game up, and I think Bowdoin was one of the best teams in the country this year. So
Yeah.
there's no shame losing to Oneonta at Oneonta.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Oneonta could have been in the Final Four. So.
Yeah.
As far as Bellow Field, it's the weird part of all the ties. Like we didn't lose, we also didn't lose. So there's
Yeah,
obviously that's like the coach spin on it, but we also we were undefeated at home as
yeah.
well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, our field is yeah. I mean, we're hard to beat there. That's kind of how
Yeah.
we'll in it that we don't lose at home. But yeah, we do usually win more at home.
Mm-hmm.
Although that being said, I think in 2021 we won 2 or 3 games in overtime at home, and
Yeah.
so it's just
Okay.
it's a different. No, I always say this: like we would have been in 2021, our regular season with no overtime would have been 7-1-6, and with overtime we were 10-1-3, which is just a drastically
Really?
different.
I should have done that homework. That's pretty interesting. So
Yeah.
that's interesting, right? Because there you go. Like there was no... That to me is like, yep. Then where you were last year, you performed at that same level, roughly, right? Like give or take, right?
Yeah,
Maybe differently, but same level.
Yeah, and in 2021, you could have argued we were the best team in the country at points.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we could have won the national championship. And
Yep.
no, we were at one point this year. I think we were 7-2-6 in the year before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was
Yeah.
basically the same regular season.
Yeah. Was there? I know you said because you played a lot of young guys. Was there ever a point in the season where it's like those inflection points where you're like, man, we just can't score, or we're struggling with all these ties, or it just doesn't feel like things are flowing? Like I said, depending on some of the games, I was like, it just didn't seem right to me.
Yeah. Well, we had a big thing before the season because I knew, like, I thought we'd lose a couple of games this year. And so we had a big emphasis on we didn't want to lose 2 games in a row because I thought that can really derail a season.
Yeah.
And we never did lose 2 games in a row, so I'm
No.
really proud of our guys for
Yeah.
that. But I also think there was never a stretch. I don't know if we won 3 games in a row at any point.
Right. Yeah.
We definitely won 2 in a row a couple of times, but yeah, I mean, I can tell you the weekend we went up to Maine and tied Bates on the Saturday. That was a potentially tricky weekend because we had a non-conference game against UMaine Farmington on Sunday. And
Yeah.
so that was the point of our season where you're like, oh man, like this could slip away, and all of a sudden we're Tufts and we might not.
Yeah.
There was a point where we were like, oh man, if we don't win a couple more NESCAC games, we could miss out on the NESCAC playoffs.
Yeah.
And so we went up and tied Bates. They're tricky field to play on. I'll put it. And that's a total excuse, but tricky field to play on. And then the next day against UMaine Farmington, it's 0-0 at halftime, and we're pressing, and guys are like just trying so hard to score goals.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah, and I know, and they're like, "What do we got to do?" Right? Like,
yeah, I think we took 20 shots in the first half, and it's 0-0. And thankfully, I think we scored like a minute into the second half, and you could just feel like the relief. I think the game finished maybe 3-0.
Yeah.
And then from that point forward, I think that was actually an interesting turning point. But we had to win. We had to, as the season kind of came to a head, we had to. We knew we needed another big win down the stretch, and we had tough
Yeah.
games. We had Middlebury and Bowdoin in our last two
Yeah.
games,
Yep.
and we felt like to get into the NCAA tournament, we definitely needed to win one of those.
Yeah.
And so that Middlebury win was a big one for us.
Huge. It was huge. Yeah.
No, I mean there were. This year was like it was always on that knife's edge of like, okay, I think we're okay, but if this game doesn't go our way, then maybe we're done.
Maybe that was it. Like it's fun. It is true. Like maybe it's just expectation, right? I'm not saying this is a soccer thing, but like I think I was expecting you guys to just sort of cruise through these wins as you do, and it was like, hey, win, oh, tie, oh, and then the whatever, the 2 or 3 losses, that would slip in, and then hey, we got to win, and then another tie, and it just never felt like there was this momentum going behind you, like you could say, hey, we've won 4 games in a row, or what you've done in the past, and it was, again, for me as an outside, I was kind of like, well, that's a surprising thing, right? Like that from Tufts, right? I think any other program would be like, yeah, okay. But for you guys, again, it just sort of seemed like you just couldn't get that momentum behind you.
Yeah, it was very much like that. I think I do think the NESCAC just makes it like that.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
The level of our league right now is crazy.
Off the charts.
I played in this league 20 years ago, and there were always 2 or 3 top teams that I think were competitive with the best teams in the country. But I think we have 8 teams in our league that could play. Whoever wins the national championship, that could give them a real game.
A real game. Yeah. I totally agree with that. Look, and I was going to add, we talking about the NESCAC the whole time, but I mean, it is kind of astounding because I think especially for people who are like, oh, the NESCAC, I'm like, no, there's fire behind that smoke, there's the depth of these teams. I mean, the depth of the teams, even look, and they didn't have a great year, but Connecticut College could still go out there and show up just about could show up a lot of teams outside the NESCAC, right?
They lost in overtime in the NESCAC.
Overtime, yeah.
Yeah. I thought if they won the NESCAC, I thought they could get to the Final Four.
And they could repeat, absolutely. But for whatever reasons. But it's astounding to me. And now Williams, who I don't want to say, struggled, but all of a sudden they're there and they're look where they're at, right? And you didn't expect that necessarily out of Williams, but like you said, you could rattle all the names off, but. Okay, so you have another, not as large, another impactful graduating class, right? Like my favorite, Ian Daly, is graduating. Sean Trainer, I think, is graduating as well. I think you have 6 guys or 7 guys who might be graduating. What are some of the things that, knowing that, are you trying to fill, or are you sort of like, hey, I dealt with it last year. We got these great guys coming in that'll be able to fill in those spots?
Yeah. Well, fortunately, Sean Trainer's going to play another year.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So Sean Trainer and Woo Shin are our 2. They're our only. It's a weird class. Their class dissipated. So there's only 2 players in that class: Sean Trainer and Woo Shin. But they're both playing another. They took a semester off during the pandemic. So that's good news with Sean Trainer and Woo, because Woo was actually one of our best players, maybe our best player at the end of the season. So those guys are both coming back. But we lose Ian Daly's obviously a big loss, one of the best players I've ever coached, and just a competitor and a great leader and captain. And then we lose Eric Ingersoll, Zach Siegelstein, Aiden Welsh. I without being like harsh on those guys, I think we're going to be just fine. The number of losses and just like the impact of the losses won't be anything like 2021. I think we're going to be really good moving forward, and maybe I said that with maybe after 2021, I said that with a little doubt in my mind. I don't doubt that at all. And for 2023, there was a point in the Oneonta game where we had 9 freshmen or sophomores on the field in an NCAA tournament second round game. So I think we're going to be in a really good spot moving forward. We'll obviously miss some guys, but I think we will already. I think in the first game of 2023, we will be better than we were at any point in 2022.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, this is recorded. I mean, I'm just.
I'm not saying we're going to get better results. I just think.
Yeah.
I just think.
No. I don't like the results. The results are the results, right? I always say, like, I just like to see what I like to watch, right? Like, we talked about the Oneonta game, so I won't dive into it. Like, let me just ask you, in that Oneonta game, I mean, would you just put it down to, man, we can't score? Was that because, like you said the first 20 minutes, I was totally impressed the first half. Like, I was like, who is Oneonta? Like, these guys can't even put up, I don't want to say a resistance, but you guys, I mean, you did what you wanted to, it seemed like, for stretches of the game.
We did. I think we need to be more dangerous in the final third, though. And I do think that's a little bit personnel. Sometimes you just need a guy. I think that's like a team like Oneonta. I thought they were a really good team, but what made them special was they had a kid who scored 15 goals. I think our leading scorer it was Ian Daly, but I don't think he's
6. 6 or 7.
Maybe even 5. And I don't think Ian actually scored after like the 5th or 6th game of the season. So most of our goal scorers were in 1s and 2s and 3s. That's not a recipe for success of winning a national championship. If your leading forwards have 3 goals, so we need to be better there. I don't know. I thought in certain phases of the game, the build-up phase and when we were in midfield, I think we're very, very good. But we just need to be more ruthless in the final third, and maybe that's on me to push more numbers forward and to get guys joining the attack, or maybe it's just on personnel. I do think I'm a big believer in personnel. Sometimes you just need some people to step up, and so that's going to be our challenge in the off season. Like, we have 10 players that can play in the front 3 for us. Which 3 or 4 or 5 are going to be the ones that take that next step forward?
Yeah. You know what's funny, and not so much the Oneonta game. The Oneonta game was the first game I'd watch, and I didn't watch all your games. I probably watched 10 of your games throughout the season. It was the first game where I thought there was some, like, your midfield and your forward line seemed like a little bit more in sync than what it seemed like in the past. But I did get the sense that throughout the season, like, I don't know if it was because of your struggle to score goals. Like, it just seemed like sometimes the midfield took it upon themselves to go ahead and try to score the goals, and it created this, I don't know, almost like an imbalance at times that your guys in the midfield weren't necessarily feeding balls. They were just sort of dribbling through from midfield, and instead of trying to dish and create space and all that kind of stuff.
No, that was for sure a real thing. I think
again, not in a bad way. I'm not trying to be right, but that was the one thing I noticed. Like, why don't you try to knock? Anyhow.
Yeah. No, that was quickly in the season. Daniel Yanez, our freshman from New Jersey. It became
I'm a fan.
Yeah, it became apparent how good he was, and he scored a couple goals early in the season.
Bangers.
And then we just when you don't have a forward who's stepping up, you then start to defer to the midfielder who can shoot from 20 yards. No, I think you're spot on with that. And Movin Shin can hit a ball, Zach Siegelstein can hit a ball, and so I don't know. We just never had a front 3 player really just step up. And they know that, and I thought they worked incredibly hard. Like, our identity is, as much as we talk about scoring goals, our identity is we don't give up goals, and we defend from the front, and we press, and we run. I thought all of our front players did all of those things, which made us competitive. But for sure, there were points in the season where we were looking for goals from midfielders more than we were looking for goals from front 3 players.
like you said, at some point you're just like, wherever it comes from, right? If you got a hot forward, you're feeding him the ball all the time, and if you don't have a hot forward, you're looking to the other guy, like who's going to be that guy, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not getting that production up top, it's a very natural thing.
Yeah, we just like we, 2021 we had Mati Kano who just scored for us.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Won us games. Like if we had Mati on our team this year, I think we're better than we were in 2021. We just didn't.
Yeah.
We just didn't have that player this year.
Well, what was the game you guys were playing where he took the ball on the outside, took a touch, and like tried to cross or shoot it to the far post, and it went in upper corner? That's the sort of thing you need, right?
We just never had any moments like that.
Yeah. Okay, because this is we're a day away from Thanksgiving, and there's a game that's going to start here in 4 minutes. Let me just ask you, sort of what does your recruiting class, or what are your objectives with this recruiting class, knowing that you have such a young squad that obviously going to have an impact? Are you looking for specific positions? Obviously, a goal scorer would be nice, but
So we're basically done with 2023 recruiting, and then NESCAC being such admissions based, you have to do it all through the early decision process. So we're more or less done. Maybe we take someone that could get in on their own or a transfer or something, but for the most part, we're probably done. I think the goal scoring piece was a key for us, and we're bringing in 3 guys that we think can play in the front 3, which gives us I have little magnets on the whiteboard for each player. And now we're like, all right, we have 12 forwards, so which 3 are gonna do the job next year? So that's for sure a piece. But I don't know. It's a different recruiting year because I think our sophomores and our freshmen are really talented. And so it just felt like we just need to continue to bring in a similar level of player. I think we'll have freshmen that play for us for sure, and I'm sure we'll have 1 or 2 that start and things for us next year, but it won't be like it was this year. I think if we had freshmen make 0 impact next year, we would be absolutely fine. Where this year we would have been in real trouble if our freshmen hadn't been really, really good.
Yeah. I mean, that is huge. I mean, Yanez, like a kid like that being able to step up and have the impact that he did is huge, right? Without a guy like that or a couple other freshmen, like you just have holes in the field that you just can't plug. Like no matter how hard you try, you put another body in there, it's not going to work. And
I think our freshman class is exceptional, and I again, who knows how results will all work out, but I expect them to be competing for all the things that like the 2018, 2019, 2021 kids did.
So what you're saying is that you're not going anywhere. Tufts is not going to, end its series of great seasons with terrible seasons going forward and make the NESCAC haters happy.
Not unless
on the boards at least.
Yeah. No, not unless I screw them up, which is certainly a possibility. But we have good players, and our program's in a good spot, and we're excited.
Yeah. All right, Coach. Hey, you got shopping to do. Really do appreciate it. Taking the time. Like I said, you got a fan from afar. One of these days, I'll get up there to watch a game, and then. Yeah. So thank you.
Sounds great. Thanks for. You can hear my dogs going crazy. Thanks for all you do for Division III soccer.
Thank you. If you like this show, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. You can also find me on anti-social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks. This is a message from my Chief Marketing Officer. I think this keeps him happy.